Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all for joining us for today's session. Um, my name is Firas, and I'm the event planner for uh, Microsoft Reactor in Redmond. Um, Please, before we start, please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary and please remain professional and on topic. The session is recorded. It will be available through Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. I'll be sharing the link of our YouTube channel in the chat. I'll also be sharing some links to the Reactor Mira page as well. Which brings us to our section today. Please join me in welcoming our regional cloud advocate, who is going to be our presenter today. Sam, I'm going to pass this along to you now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I am Sam Wronski. I am the regional cloud advocate here at Microsoft, trying to help empower all of you to build awesome things with Microsoft technologies. So what we're doing is adding leaderboards to our Flappy Cube game. And so what this is a way for you to do high scores or tournaments or compare different players in your game against one another. And it's pretty cool. So I've actually already set it up. So we're going to kind of take this a little bit differently. I'm curious how this format goes. So we're going to experiment. But what this is if we play this game, I've created a series of users who all have high scores. And so if I log into our account and start playing, you can see a few things. One, we have a score at the top there. I've added score tracking, which is basically the number of cubes or obstacles that despawn in the world. A high score, which is your total high score. And then at the bottom here of our game is a list of all the players in the game and the top 5 high scores for this game. So in this case, 3 of them have high scores. The other ones were just quick to get some data in there. But this gives us a way to actually compare things. And so we're going to look at how to set all of this up and kind of step back and re-implement most of this so that it works. I did this all beforehand because things like setting up this UI, I don't know how much time we wanted to spend on that. So we're going to try to spend as little as possible. So this is what we're building. And so if I keep playing, we will lose. And that's that. So here we are with our game. There's a few other things that have been added. I added a leaderboard and a player high score prefab. So the leaderboard stores the leaderboard. And then the player high score is the table row for each player. So how this works, there's a whole bunch going on here to make all this work, but it's basically relying on the same thing we were doing previously, statistics. So you can create player statistics that track all sorts of different things. In this case, we have a statistic for high scores. So our high score statistic is under our leaderboards. There's a number of them here. Some of these were automatically created for me, but one of them was created by me. And that's the high score test. We're going to be implementing high score, but this is the test right now. And this is the current leaderboard that you can use to experiment with all of this stuff. So we have 5 different users right now. All of them have a high score test statistic assigned to them. So any player that gets that high score test statistic is going to be here. In this case, I've set it up so that the statistic is published from the client. If you want something more authoritative, you probably want to do that on the server side to avoid people submitting bad values. This would be very easy to submit like 9 billion as your high score, which you probably don't want people to do. For this, I figured it'd be interesting to kind of leave it and see if people figure that out. So we're going to do that. But yeah, this is the high score. And we can go and edit that. There's a few other things. This is just a basic high score that's going to give you a set of high scores for your player. But if we go back to our leaderboard, let's create a new one. So in this case, we're going to call this high score. So we're going to start out all over with a new high score. There's a few things here. There's a reset frequency, which you can tune to reset your statistics as often as you would like. What this can do is give you like a weekly high scores list. So who has gotten the highest score the past week or the past month. And you can also use this to set up tournaments. So when this ends, you can assign prizes to people. So we have aggregation. In this case, the last value is the default. That's whatever the last statistic value is. We're going to use maximum. And so what this is going to do is take the maximum of all the statistics that you end up publishing. So if we get a score of 30 and then we publish a score of 4, now if it's assigned to maximum, we would ignore that new 4 and wouldn't lower the player's highest score because they got a lower score. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to assign this to maximum and save this. So if we do that, we get a new leaderboard. There's no player has a high score statistic assigned to them, so this doesn't have anything assigned to it. There's no results here. That's what we're going to be adding now. The other thing is this prize tables. I mentioned tournaments and giving away things at the end to people with high scores. This gives you a way to do that. So if you go into a new prize table, you can give it a name. We'll just call it test. My demo does not use these, but you can play with them. They're pretty cool. And then you just select a leaderboard. So let's pick our new one. Let's pick high score and add a rank. And so what this is going to do is select a rank from the player base to provide specific rewards. In this case, you could send a push notification to the top 10 and say, congratulations, you got the high score for the week, something like that. Or you can assign in-game items. You can give them currency or new items, or execute some sort of Azure function, for example. Maybe you want to publish the top player on Twitter, for example. This gives you a way to kind of automate all of that and do everything from here. And it should just work. So that is the prize table. We are going to cancel that, go back to our leaderboard, and we're going to work with high scores. In order to make this work, we need players with high scores. So let's go and look at how we do all of these leaderboard configurations. There's a number of different ways to do this. In this case, I'm looking at the top players and building a leaderboard based on the top players globally. So anybody that plays the game is going to get a high score, and that high score is going to be compared against everybody else's, and the 5 highest globally are going to be shown in the list. You can also display local high scores, so people who have a score near the current signed-in player. That's another option, or display friends and show the high scores of a player's friends. All of those are options. We're doing the highest scores just because I feel like that's it made sense. So that's what we're doing. So let's look at how all of this ends up working. In this case, we're just signing in. So it's the normal login flow. I just click play and then click login. And that's actually going to rebuild some things, I guess, and then log us in. And then there's a few things that are happening. It's kind of hard to see, but there is a delay between all of this stuff getting populated, because the way I have this set up, when we awake when our game manager class awakes, it actually goes and pulls all these statistics for us. So what that ends up looking like is this. So there's 5 classes, I guess, that I'm kind of working in and integrating with. So we have our player controller, which has our games played, but also controls our high score submission. So when the player loses, we need to submit a high score. That's happening here. We have our obstacle mover. This is what handles moving and despawning the obstacle cubes. In this case, that's handling incrementing our score. So score is kept locally and managed that way. It just seemed nice. I have avoided some of the networking stuff. So to keep this as simple as possible, there can be a few latency issues, which we might see throughout this demo. That's sort of intentional, because it kind of hopefully highlights that this stuff is happening on a remote server, not your computer. And that means that when you invoke and say, post this new score, it might not immediately get picked up if you immediately after that call request the new value. So that's incrementing our score. We have our score manager. This is a new, I guess it's singleton. It kind of functions like a singleton. It kind of doesn't. So what this is doing, if I should talk a little bit about that. A singleton is a single instance of a class. There can only be one. In this case, that's tracked by this instance, but it isn't quite a singleton because you can make multiple of these. In that case, the instance just gets weird. It should still work, but it'll be weird. So we have awake here, which assigns the instance out to that. The reason we're doing that is because it prevents us having to, every time we want to increment the score, it prevents us from having to go out and find this score manager and increment that. It saves us that call, which is a relatively expensive thing. So we don't want to do that constantly. So what we're doing here is actually grabbing the statistics that we need. The score manager tracks the top score that the player has, the score that the player has, the current score, and the leaders. So these three values here are tracking current score, top score for that player, and who the leaders among everybody is. And so we're pulling those from these two API calls. So what's happening here is we're going out to our high score test and grabbing the top 5 players. So we're getting the top 5 results. We can set the max results. And then when we get a response back, we're assigning the leaders equal to the leaderboard from that response. Otherwise, we're just throwing an error. The other one is grabbing the first. This is a slight modification from what we've done in the previous videos. If you're unfamiliar, go and check out on the Microsoft Reactor YouTube. We do have how we got to this point in there. So what's going on here is we're doing first or default. The reason we're doing this is because a player may not have a high score test or a high score the first time you run that player, the first time you create that player. And so what this is doing adding some null checks. So if we can't find a player, we're going to return the default value. The default for an object is null. So we're going to get null. And so this question mark dot operator is a null termination. I forget the name of the operator. There's a bunch of question mark operators that work with null. And what this is doing is testing if the left-hand side is null. If it isn't, if the left-hand side is an object, it's going to evaluate this and pull the value from whatever object it was. Otherwise, if it is null, it's going to return null and just kind of stop this. This prevents us from having to write if null in our code. And then I have, because we're going to be passing null in and we're expecting an integer, I have this double question mark which says if this is null, then return the right-hand side, which is just a default value of 0. So if there is no high score test available for the user, what this ends up doing is returning 0. So that's what's going on there. It gets a little bit long with those kind of Boolean logic things, but that's what I decided on for code. So what's ended up happening here is I'm using properties to update things. We have an update score display, which actually changes what the user sees. This goes through and updates the entire thing. There's a bunch going on behind the scenes to make all that happen. We'll get to that in a sec. But this basically assigns a value and then updates the entire UI. This is not efficient, but this is a demo, and I'm trying to get the parts that we're trying to show to work, and how you want to handle the UI updates and UI in your game is going to change. So I don't want to spend too much time showing one way when there's lots of different ways that work. So anyway, what ends up happening is we call an update score display, which assigns our score and the high score to the text box at the top and finds our create table option or object and assigns the leaders there. This one, I didn't make a singleton because reasons. And then we end up over here at the create leaderboard thing. This is mostly just handling UI stuff. There's nothing related to PlayFab here. This is just converting those player leaderboard entries that we got that show the top players and inserting them one by one into a Unity GUI object so that we can have one on top of the other. That's all this is doing, is just managing that. If one already exists, it updates it and then recreates it. And then the final one is just this. This is what is actually displaying the text. So 5 things to end up displaying this. If we just go in, I can kind of point at what's happening here. That's not what I want. There we go. Log in. And so the UI tests are happening down here. This yellow and white thing, tried to make them different colors so I can actually refer to them without just pointing at my screen, because that's not actually, turns out that's not helpful. So those are our high scores. In this case, the test and 21 are going to be associated with this. So the player name element and the player score element are the 2 text elements on either side. They're left and right aligned, so you get one on either side, and that makes it just kind of look nice. And then it's basically just assigning the text in a Text Mesh Pro object. So that creates that. And then the high score is just a new line up here. No fancy formatting or anything. Just score, some value, high score, 21, whatever the high score is. And then as objects move off the screen, things will happen. We do pull the new high score every single time. You can see as those cubes are falling off, they will go away. There we go. So you get new high scores as you're going. This is back from when we were playing with statistics. So this player still has -30 plays, which is weird, but that's a thing. So this is how all of this is working. What we're going to do is actually implement this, because that was sort of the overview. Let's actually like do the thing. Most of this is actually coming from the PlayFab Quick Start, which I think I have pulled up. Tournaments and leaderboards. Here we go. So most of that is coming from here. And so what ends up happening is you create a statistic, assign or associate a leaderboard with that statistic, and then start assigning and updating the high score or statistic for that leaderboard. And so there's code samples here to do all this. If you don't have them and you don't copy them from my screen, because then you get this. So these give you options for ways to implement this. So you can kind of tweak these. There's a few different functions, like I mentioned, to pull different areas of your leaderboard that are sort of relevant to that player. But in this case, we're just gonna implement a few things. We need high scores to work. We don't have high scores working. So the first thing we're going to do is pull the player's high score. So this gets us our games played. We're not using that right now, but we do need to record a high score. So when the player loses, we need to store the high score online. So what we're going to do is just delete test. And so that's what's going to happen here. I'm going to re-implement this just to kind of walk you through as we're doing this, because I think that just makes more sense. So if we do PlayFab client API, and update our player statistic. Again, this will not work if you have not set up PlayFab to support this. So update player statistic request. There we go. So to make this work, because otherwise you're going to get an error, if you go to PlayFab and go into this little gear up here with your title, this is going to give you some title settings. There we go. So if you open title settings, it's going to give you a whole bunch of options for your title. You need to select API features and allow your player to post player statistics. You allow clients to post player statistics. This is going to make that not throw an error. If you uncheck this, it doesn't work. You're going to get an error. The reason is because if you allow players to submit this, they can override their own statistics. Depending on what you're storing, that probably isn't something you actually want. So by putting it on the server, you can kind of have a stricter control over that, and you avoid people just submitting junk. So that's what that's there for. If you're not so concerned, like we're not here, you can actually just submit it and turn the option on. So update player statistics, we're going to just do that. We need to assign a statistic. So this is actually very similar to what we did in the previous video, where we were updating our player statistics. In this case, we are going to do that. There we go. And fix our white space because that was gross. We need to give it a statistic name. In this case, I'm going to assign it high score. This should just map to whatever high score you're trying to assign. And then the value is what we need. So we're recording a key value pair, basically, where one is a string and one is a integer value, I believe. So score manager, in this case, the instance is how we get that singleton reference out, and we just send in the score. And then that should be enough to actually send the request. We just need to handle the success and error cases. So we're going to get some response here. Let's get out of my bad habits and do response, debug log, set high score. So we know a little bit what's going on. And then error is probably a better option here. Debug log error. So if we get an error, this won't work, for example, if no player is signed in, because we're trying to update a player statistic. If we don't have a signed in player, we're going to get weird things. Or if you try to update somebody else's statistic, that also shouldn't work. So we get log error. We generate error report. There we go. And so this is how we're going to update our statistic. This is how we're going to actually assign a high score to this user. So we can just remove this. I'm just going to comment it out just so it's there. Probably can just delete it. But that's another bad habit. In this case, we're going to assign our high score, and we're actually just going to play this. So this will mean our leaderboard no longer works. We're not pulling down the correct high score anymore. Because we're pulling it down for high score test, which we are no longer assigning to. We're assigning to high score. But we should be able to see that in PlayFab's UI. So if we start running this and log in, we should, I guess we don't even need points, do we? We can just keep going. But I'm actually going to attempt to not be bad on a stream. There we go. So we get 4. But then I lose and get 0. We should still see a statistic with the high score equal to 4. So we wouldn't have overridden the statistic, even though we got that other thing. So let's go ahead and find that player inside of our players. And let's search for test. This is our test user. If we go under statistics, we should see 3. So we have high score, which is 4, which is good. It means we didn't override our high score by submitting 0 and updating 0. We're taking the maximum value, the highest value among all of them. So we end up with a high score of 4. So that should mean that if we go over to leaderboards as well and look at our high scores, we now have a leaderboard with the top ranked player having a score of 4. So this is our top ranked player. If you want to see the player, you can actually just navigate into them by clicking, and that will actually bring up the entire player. So you can see all of their player statistics and stats and data. Lots of stats. So that is that. The problem is we don't actually see that in the UI. So we're going to actually pull that down into our game. We want to show the leaderboard to the people playing the game because that's sort of why it's there. So let's do that. So if we look at our code and jump into our score manager, we have a few things going on here. Update score display is going to update our UI. we shouldn't need to change that. It should automatically just work because we're just focusing on these player leaderboard entries, which is a PlayFab object, which stores a few different things about who scored what. In this case, it stores the display name, the PlayFab ID, so you have an identifier to actually tie back to the entity, and the position in the scoreboard, as well as the stats value. So this is actually going to give you a way to get the display name and stats value out of that player, so you can actually write it into your UI. So in this case, we have two things that we're doing. The first one we're doing is pulling down the high score. That's happening here. So this is reusing the get statistics thing that we were using previously. So if I comment that out and just show you what's going on, we can do PlayFab client API get leaderboard. And we're just going to make a request out to that leaderboard. So we can do statistics equals our high score, and do a max results. I was looking at the wrong one. Skipping ahead of myself. That's fine. I had these out of order. So we're actually getting the leaderboard. I should have known that from the get leaderboard. But anyway, we're getting the leaderboard. So we get a max number of results. This is going to get the top results for this. There's a few others. I'm going to step back now because I just realized what I was doing. But you can get leaderboard, or you can get leaderboard around player, or for a character, or for user characters. So you can actually find a leaderboard specifically around a specific player. So this is actually going to give you a way to find local high scores, like who's your rival, who's getting scores just above you, who you might want to be trying to beat. You can also get friend leaderboards, and we're going to be doing that next week. So we're going to be dealing with adding and accepting friend requests and looking at friend leaderboards next week. So that's coming up. We have get leaderboard that's going to find the top. The default is 10, and you can pull a maximum of 100 here. So you can pull up to 100 entries from this single API call. And then we're going to get 5 just for ours, because that just makes more sense. And it doesn't clutter our UI. So that's what I'm choosing. But we can change that as we go on. So next, we're just going to do leaders equals result leaderboard. And breaking my bad habits. They're really hard to break once you've started. So if we do that and then assign the debug, so error is our debug, log error, generate error report. Cool. All right. So what this is doing is assigning our leaders in this object from the leaderboard. So there's a few things in the results that you can get. You can get the leaderboard. You can get the next reset. So again, we had the weekly or daily resets for our high scores. This will let you figure out when that's going to happen. So if you want to display a countdown, for example, and say high scores reset in two days, or tournament ends in 1 day, you can do that a little bit nicer. That kind of gives you that option. That's that. So we're pulling out the leaderboard, which is just going to have a list of those results. So it's just going to be ordered and ranked for you. So you can just pull that rank out and use it. Again, this is a property. So leaders is a property. So when we set this, we assign the value and we update our score display, which means the UI gets an update. So that's what's going on here. In this case, we just pulled the leaders down, which means that this new table is going to have some new leaders assigned to it. Now we only have one user that has this high score assigned to them. All the other ones don't. So we need to do something for that to make that actually work. So what's going to happen is we're just going to pull the maximum of whatever we set. So in this case, we asked for a maximum of 5 leaders. So if we request this, you can see we only get 1. We get test with a leader or with a high score of 4. And so you can kind of tweak this to make it work as you want. But in this case, we're pulling as many as have that up to 5. And since there aren't that many, we're only pulling 1. So this doesn't throw an error or anything. We don't get any issues because we don't have the total number of players with that high score. Instead, we just get 1. So we get 1 result. So that is that. What else? We also need to update the high score because that is inaccurate. That's using the old version. So we're going to go and pull that high score. In this case, I'm pulling it from a statistic because they're all just statistics. So we can do that. So PlayFab client, spell that right. Get player statistic. And we're just going to request that statistic. So this is, again, similar to what we did previously. We're just going to request the statistic. I'm going to copy it because I guess, I don't know why I'm retyping this, but anyway. So we have this high score. And then the other thing we're doing is getting a result. So I'm going to actually walk through what this statement is doing, just because it uses some C# stuff that I'm not sure is super familiar for everybody. So we're gonna go through it just to make sure. Also, I think it's really cool. So that's another reason. So what we're going to do is assign the player top score. This is the top score the player has. We're going to look through the results and look at our statistics. Statistics returns a list of all the statistics. So what we need to find is from that search list, we search for high score. We need to find the statistics that are returned that match that. So in this case, we need to find the first or the default. So the value of doing this, using first instead of something else, is that we're going to look through the list until we find the first result that matches our query. And then we're going to return that. And that way, if you have a long list, for example, it will stop your iteration prior to you getting something. The other option is doing dot where, and then like taking the first element or something like that. You can also just run dot first without any parameters, and that will take the first element of whatever the list is. But if you give it a parameter, it will do the first that matches that parameter. To do this, you need link included in your project. So another thing, but we're going to look at our statistic name and find one where the statistic name has a high score equal, or a name equal to high score. And so we're going to do that. And then we're going to do this question mark period, which means it's a null continuation, I believe is the term. And so what this is going to do is if we get the default value, which is null, if we get null, we can't look at the value. We can't inspect into those objects because it's null. It will throw a null pointer error and our game will break. So what we're doing here is doing that. So we'll get null and it will just return null. Or if it's not null, instead of returning the object, I want to return just the value. That's what's going on here. And then because we can either get, at this point, after writing value, we can have 2 values. We can either have the value that is stored in that statistic, or we can have null. Those are the 2 options. So instead of, again, null pointering because we didn't get a value, we can say if we did get null, let's use a default. So in this case, my default is 0. So your default high score is 0. And so we're going to assign that. And that is how that whole code block ends up working. The next thing is our error handling. This is the same everywhere. So we're going to go through it real quick and just generate an error report. There we go. And then I'm just going to comment that out. And now we have our high scores. So this is actually pulling down the statistic for the player's high score. So instead of seeing 21, we should now see 4. So if we run this now, If I don't get impatient, there we go. Also, this would be, there's a lot of opportunity for questions here. So if anybody has any questions or suggestions on things we should explore or test, or just how they could apply this to their own games, definitely drop that in a comment or something, and we can explore that, because that's what this is here for. So once this starts, let's just log in. Now you can see our high score is 4. So we're actually getting that statistic back. So that is how all of this ends up working. That's how we're getting our statistics, and that is how we're pulling down our leaderboard. The way this works is we can just constantly keep adding new things to this, and it doesn't need to track high scores. I'm using high scores as an example here, as a way for us to can test this. But you can also track other things. For example, like the player who has completed the most quests in a specific amount of time. That's an option as well. Or collected the most gold, or done, etc. Whatever you want to track and compare and do those kind of things, this gives you that option. So there we go. Maybe points in like a capture the flag match or something. So we're going to actually just create a new user quick, because why not? So let's call this stream demo. Sure. So let's register a new user. I'm just constantly doing things. There's a disadvantage of doing what I'm doing here, which is I am providing emails that do not exist into this system. And so there's no way for me to recover this as a user. These users are created and then they don't really do anything. So for example, password resets or something would not work. If we set up an SMTP server and then try to send to this user, it wouldn't work. But it's useful for testing because we can create a bunch of them. And you can customize these users from the PlayFab UI. So we can actually go in there and start assigning things. So if we go into our login and log our user in, we can lose. So a few things happened there. Well, I went too fast. But a few things happened there. We didn't get an update immediately. So the first time I lost, there still wasn't a high score here. And the reason is we are actually sending these requests off to PlayFab server. And that there's some async stuff happening there. Since it's not all on one thread at once, doing this and then this and then this, it's not a procedural thing. Because of that, there can be some delay in how these things go. So in this case, we're reloading immediately afterwards and then requesting the stat. We might not get anything because it hasn't reached the server yet. So the two requests can be processed simultaneously. So in this case, we got a little bit of a weird situation where we were getting different values than we actually had posted. That doesn't mean they haven't gone through. It just means that you requested them before they got saved and could be retrieved. So that's what's going on there. This demo intentionally leaves that in, but you could probably find a way around that. So let's actually get a high score. So something useful. Perfect. We also had 0 there, but then I lost. So there we go. We have a high score of 1, which is not great, but it is a score. So we can actually go and check this player. What did I even call them? This is the problem with just creating a bunch of random users like this. We called it stream something. Nope, apparently not. Stream demo. There we go. So let's find our player and take a look at their statistics. So there should be 2 actually here. There's games played, which is incremented automatically from the metrics that we're retrieving, and there's a high score, which is assigned here. So in this case, high score of 1 is coming from this. So that's how all of this ends up happening. But yeah, I think that's mostly it. I can dive a little bit deeper into some of this stuff, but I do want to cover any questions or comments. So if anybody has those, please let me know. Otherwise, we're going to dive a little bit deeper. So I'll stop what I'm doing and answer those if they come up. But going into here, into our high scores, we have two things right now. We have test and stream demo as our two users with different things. We can actually automatically reset this. So we can change and reset all these values. So they'll be gone. We can also go and let's actually do this a different way. Let's go into our stream demo because I have it signed in. So it automatically signs in our other user. So let's change somebody who isn't automatically signed in. So in this case, high score, let's set this equal to 1,000. You can see we're going to get a notification that this value is modified. That's letting us know that something's happened. We should probably save our changes if we want that to actually persist. And so we do. And now we have some user with a high score of 1,000. This gives you a way to kind of tweak these things and change the value of a high score without having to do anything. So if you want to remove a bad value or something, gives you a way to do that. You can kind of just tweak statistics as you would normally. It turns out these work exactly the same way. So if we run this now, we should see a high score of 1,000. And so we should be significantly below. And I broke my UI. Nice. So that's a thing. But there we go. It gives you a way to iterate over these things. Now let's go back here and actually start triggering a few things off of this. So what I would like to do is not get lost. There we go. Go into our high score, and we should be able to edit this. So we can actually change a few different things here. Right now, it's all set to manually reset, which means we have to click that reset button in order to reset things. So if I do this, we should see those statistics go away. At least that's my expectation. There we go. So those are all gone. And we have an archive of what those were when that reset happened. So if you want to do like seasons, for example, in your game and have stats tracked over a specific season and then reset all of those at the end of the season, whenever that might be, this could be a way to implement that. And then you have a way to actually download what all those stats were at that point. So now we have an empty leaderboard. It also means our players no longer have statistics. So if we go in here and refresh this, high score is gone. We deleted it. So this is a way to kind of fully reset this. In this case, fully reset it by getting rid of it. So if we go and run this again, we'll start recreating those statistics for that user. So test, login, everything still works. But now we're getting this. And I can get to a few points and then lose. We'll lose a few more times because that's a thing. And now we have a score of 4. So our player has scored 4 again. Probably should have gotten a different number, but anyway, we have 4. So we go and check this now. Our new statistic should show up. Am I looking at the right user? I'm not. That would be why. So let's go to players and do test. And open up this player with statistics and find our high score of 4. So now we have our new player that has the statistic assigned again for that. Again, we can automatically reset these. So if we're managing a tournament, for example, we can go into our leaderboards, assign the prize table. That's what I want. There is a tutorial on this if you want. I highly recommend it. This kind of will walk you through pretty much everything to get this set up. So if you prefer a text version of what I'm talking about, this is an option for that. And this will walk you through how to get all of this stuff set up and assign everything. But what we're going to do is just add a rank. I got lost. There we go. New prize table. I don't know what to call this. Let's just call this results because I guess we can. And we're going to look at our high score leaderboard and add a rank for this. And we're going to, I don't have a statistic to track this. So this is maybe a less good example, but we can actually increment a statistic. We don't have anything here. In this case, we have games played. We have 2 high scores, one for the test and one for not the test. And then we have reactor streams and something else new, which are both test things. But we can actually add some other statistic here and then pull from that instead. So let's try that. Let's go to our test player and create a statistic because why not? And we're going to do tournament wins. We're just going to assign that to, that's not how that works. Add new. What have I done wrong? Oh no. Demo curse. I didn't. Okay, got it. Tournament wins. Create. Perfect. We'll assign that to 0 and save this. Now we have a new statistic that's going to track the number of tournaments you have won on this account. And so now we can go back here. It won't show up here. We need to refresh to get that. So we could either save and come back to this or whatever. I'm just going to do that quick. Please reload the page. Okay, let's do that. Name, test prize. And so we're going to, again, track our high score, add a rank, and we are going to increment a player statistic by tournament wins and increment them by 1. And so what this means is at the end of that, the people with the high rank are going to automatically get an automatic increase to the number of tournament wins they have. So we should be able to just trigger that. We should be able to go here and set that up. You can also see we have a new leaderboard automatically for tournament wins. That got created for us. So we can just go and grab tournament wins if we wanted to. And potentially rank players that way and show like a most high scores or something. Because this is a demo, we don't have time to like wait for a reset. So we're just going to reset manually and click this. And so we should see players get automatically updated here. We should see this tournament wins go up by 1. And there we go. So high score disappears, and now we have a tournament win because we were one of the top ranked players for that period. And so that gives us a way to kind of track all of these things and do reward players with currency or something else automatically based off of this. One of the things I've been thinking about is like tweeting out winners or something. I think that would be interesting. But there's a whole bunch you can do here because they're fairly generic tools, which means that you can kind of tweak them and use them however you prefer. Whatever makes sense for what you're trying to do, you can kind of tweak these things to accomplish that a lot of the time. Statistics just are key value pairs. So the prize rank is calculated on a reset. Yes. So that's what ends up happening. So if we look back here, prize tables. Let me see if I can figure out what that is. Yeah, so there's a 1 to 10 inclusive for the rank. So the top 10 players in this case would have gotten a tournament win increment by invoking this. And so that gives you a way to kind of modify that. Does that answer the question or not? I think typically you would probably have this on like a weekly schedule, an automatic schedule. Or if you're doing like a big patch release, for example, and you want to reset scores and stuff and pass out rewards for the people who had most playtime or something, this gives you a way to do that. If you want to provide those kind of rewards, you can kind of, again, it's just statistics. So it's just based off of your key value pair. You can trigger actions basically. So it's sort of if this, then do this. And in this case, we're triggering things off of game events. So I don't know. I thought it was cool. So yeah, we're gonna show that. But yeah, I think that's mostly it. There's not too much to this. This entire series is sort of intended as like a introduction to this. Part of the goal here is to provide some base knowledge that you can kind of take to like the global game jam at the end of this month. If you would like to go in and build something else. Would you use statistics to implement achievements too? I don't know. So I'm also learning PlayFab at this point. So I'm still in the process of trying to figure all this out. I think you could do that, but I think depending on what you're trying to accomplish, there might be other ways. I think it really depends. So I think there's lots of options for you, because a lot of the times achievements are tied to the platform you're on. So Xbox Live has Xbox achievements, whereas other platforms are going to provide different things. So you might have different ways to track them. The thing with programming is there isn't really a wrong way to do things unless it doesn't work, which can get you into trouble because you may not find out that it doesn't work for a while. But that can also be one of the tricky things, is figuring out what, based off of your use case, does it make sense? If you need to track online statistics, this could be a way. I've seen this used for like online saves, for example. So if you want to save a player's game through statistics, that should be possible. So you can do that. Yeah. Any other questions while I'm here? I have about 8 more minutes. So we can do that. Otherwise, I can kind of showcase one other thing. But other than that, I think that's mostly it. So yeah. Hopefully this is just a quick introduction. I'm trying to keep things focused and hopefully the demo is not too intimidating. That's why we're doing a Flappy Cube. There's no art in this game because of that. Also, the plan is to make this game public. So you can, oh, that's not right. The plan is to make this public. So you can actually go and grab this game in your browser and play the WebGL version of this and start actually interacting with this. So there should be, within the next week or so, there should be a playable demo of this where you can actually browse the source code, fork it and play with it yourself, or just play the game and see how how these online things translate into a user experience for a player. So that should be coming shortly. It just takes a little bit for me to figure out how to actually release all of it and do all of that. But I'm working through that. So whenever that gets sorted out and I figure out the way I want to do it, we'll do that. But yeah, it's interesting. So the last thing I wanted to cover quickly is that local high scores. So in this case, we are getting local high scores, so we can get leaderboard. We can also do get leaderboard around player. And so this is going to do a very similar thing. The request is different, so this doesn't work. And I've used this less, so we're my knowledge around here is slightly less good. But this allows you to pull information about what's around the player and actually get local information. For us, we have 2 users. We have nobody anymore with a score. So this isn't actually that useful for us. But the results you're going to get are going to be very similar. Where we're getting, we're passing the statistic name and getting something new. So this will allow you to get those nearby things, and the result is fairly similar as well. Just go and look at this. There we go. All right, find the result. And so again, it's the same similar things. You get a reset period when the next reset is planned. This is not going to be very useful if you have it manually timed. So null if the reset does not reset on a schedule. So if you have that set up, it's you're not going to get much useful information. But if you do have something occurring monthly or something, that will give you a way to display that easily to your players without you having to implement something yourself. The other one is just getting the leaderboard stuff, which will allow you to display those nearby players. And so it's a very similar implementation. You'll just get different statistics. Instead of getting the top player who has the highest score, you're going to get rivals, people with a score close to you. But that's mostly it. Yeah, I think that I'll leave that there. The only other thing I want to call it is the Global Game Jam is coming up. Highly recommend it as a way to meet other developers in your community who are also interested in games, and build a game, build something and meet some people and learn something cool. Hopefully some of this stuff is stuff that you could bring there if that was something that you needed. So this is like players near you in score, so you can display top 10. And then there's down at 12,000 with the players around you. Flight Sim does this for landing challenges, I think. I do not know how Flight Sim works. Unfortunately, that is not a game that I have played. It's intimidating. I don't think I've played a Flight Sim game in like a very long time. But yes, so this is going to find you results similar to score, not similar to around you, if I'm remembering this correctly, centered on the requested player. So in this case, you will be the center of this 5-person result. Whereas it's not going to be around you physically, I do not think. I don't think there's a way to do that. At least I haven't found one. But again, I'm still learning, and this is also very these kind of things kind of scale and then become more complicated and more interesting. And so we're kind of building into that. That's part of the intention of making this public, so everybody else can start exploring this and signing up and stuff, and hopefully do that. And we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's sort of how this all works. You can kind of play with that. Again, next week at this time, we're going to be exploring friends. So how do you add a friend that you know so you can track their Global Game Jam link? Yes, I can get that for you. So let me go globalgamejam.org. But this will allow you to find things. It's based off of local stuff. So local communities around you are probably hosting an event. It's a global thing. So you can find an event near you, a location near you. I believe they've done different things, and you can do that and then start connecting with people. But that's starting soon. So you can actually start exploring that. But highly recommend it. It's a good way to build a community or connect with other people near you, if that's what you're looking for. So yeah. I think that's it. We're doing friends next week. So we're going to do this leaderboard, but for friends. So you can find your friends that have scores similar to you, or who among your friends has the highest score. And just track your friends so you can actually connect with people. So that's what we're doing. But yeah, I do have 2 minutes. So if there are any other questions, otherwise you can go and check that out. Definitely, if you use this stuff, let me know. Because that's the coolest part of this job, is figuring out when people are using your stuff and building really cool things. And it'd just be really cool to know what people are building with this. So if you are using that, go and do that. There is a survey link that I think is dropped in the chat. So if you want to fill that out, that also helps me out. So thanks so much. And I will, I think, leave it here. So thanks, everybody. And I really appreciate all of your time.
Thank you so much, Sam. That was really a great session. I appreciate it. Again, I just want to thank everyone for joining. And as Sam mentioned at the end, we're constantly striving to hear what you have to say about our events. And we'd love to hear your feedback about how this event went. So please use the link I just dropped in the chat and use the event code 15013 to let us know how this went. And other than that, thanks again, and have a good one.
Thanks, everyone.